Hello, everybody. This is Father Simeon, and I'm doing the week in review next week. This is for the newsletter that's going out on Friday, the 16th of September. Let me share my screen so that we can see what's going on this week. Okay. Here we go. So again, September 16th edition, looking at next week. Okay, this is what we have going on. We have the Sunday after the cross, and then you'll notice a few feasts are listed on this calendar of Eustathios, the great martyr, and his wife and two children. We'll talk about this, as well as the conception of John the Baptist. There's a lot more going on. This is a very basic calendar. Every day of the year, there is an event in salvation history or someone in salvation history that we are commemorating. And we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot that I'm going to omit. There's some saints that are, I think, very important that we're not even going to mention, but we're going to also look at some important saints. This is an amazing saint. This is Saint Theodore of Tarsus, Archbishop of Canterbury, also known as Saint Theodore of Canterbury. And he was born in 602 in Tarsus. So he's from the same town that the Holy Apostle Paul is from. And he's an Antiochian, but one who, it seems, may have actually studied in Antioch in Syria. He seems to certainly show a particular Antiochian way of interpretation, of emphasis on interpretation, and may have been educated in Constantinople as well before going to Orthodox Rome, old Rome, and joined one of the Eastern Rite monasteries there. So there were Eastern monasteries in the West as well. And in 668, the Pope of Rome consecrated him to be the Archbishop of Canterbury and made a contribution to the church in Britain by his administration, and also a significant contribution to education by starting a school there. And he's an incredible symbol in his person for the unity of faith. The East and West held a common faith, and Antioch, Constantinople, but Rome, Britain, a faith and life, but a diversity of liturgical practice and of practical expressions of faith and of cultural richness and diversity. And the beautiful thing about Orthodoxy is that whatever culture it goes into, it can be expressed through that culture. That was true of Eastern culture. The Eastern side of the Roman Empire was true in the West. It's true in China. It's true everywhere. Whatever our culture is, we can express it through that culture. He fell asleep in the Lord in 690, but I mean, an incredible saint everybody should know about. This icon here is by the hand of Aidan Hart, who is also the iconographer that is responsible for the enormous mosaics of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection at St. George here in Houston, as well as some other mosaics on the property. And some of us have commissioned icons from Aidan. I recommend you visit his website and look at his iconography as well. I recommend people look at the iconography as students as well. So I want to read a little bit from the Venerable Bede. This is from the Ecclesiastical History of the English People. I mean, that's a great text. It's sort of like reading Eusebius's church history, but particularly for the English people. So this is beautiful, and I want to read it again for those of you who might be driving and just listening to this. There was at that time in Rome a monk called Theodore, known to Hadrian, born at Tarsus in Cilicia, a man instructed in secular and divine writings, as also in Greek and Latin, of high character and venerable age, being 66 years old. Hadrian proposed him to the Pope to be ordained bishop, and prevailed, but upon the condition that he should himself conduct him into Britain, because he had already traveled through Gaul twice upon different occasions, and was therefore better acquainted with the way, and was moreover sufficiently provided with men of his own, as also to the end that, being his fellow laborer in teaching, he might take special care that Theodore should not, according to the custom of the Greeks, introduce anything contrary to the truth of the faith into the church where he presided. Theodore, being ordained subdeacon, waited 4 months for his hair to grow, that it might be shorn into the shape of a crown. For he had before the tonsure of St. Paul the Apostle, after the manner of the Eastern people. He was ordained by Pope Vitalian in the year of our Lord 668 on Sunday, 26th of March, and on the 27th of May was sent with Hadrian to Britain. So it's very interesting here. We need to remember there's different liturgical practice, right? At one time in Britain, it's associated with a more Celtic way of worship, as well as a more Roman way of worship. You may look up the Synod of Whitby if you're interested in how it really went toward the Roman practice and away from the Celtic practice. But it's interesting wherever one serves. He's in the West now, that he serve according to the way that is appropriate for the place where he is, right? It's like where do we fast? When in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? If you're in a certain part of the world and there's fasting differently from where you are from, then you conform to the geographic place and the practice of the church there. And it's very interesting that he had a tonsuring as was appropriate for monks in the East, but when he became bishop, the Archbishop of Canterbury, in preparation for that, his hair was tonsured according to the Roman tradition. So you see in this icon, there's more of a Roman, you see a scalp, more of a Roman way of tonsuring. This is really the Orthodox way, right? One faith, and yet cultural diversity, and within the different cultures throughout the world, different liturgical practice, even today, slight differences in liturgical practice, even though we use the same liturgy. Between like the Greeks and the Slavs, different shapes of vestments slightly. In the West, it was very different shape of vestment than in the East, although there are certain corresponding parts to those vestments. So you see the similarity and also diversity, and that diversity in liturgical practice and in cultural practices, that was normal. Underlying it all was one apostolic faith and one spiritual life that encompassed the East and the West here in the 600s. So I want to continue. If you allow me to read some more, it's beautiful, and it really relates to education. Theodore came to his church in the 2nd year after his consecration on Sunday, the 27th of May, and spent in it 21 years, 3 months, and 26 days. Soon after, he visited all the island, wherever the tribes of the English dwelt, for he was gladly received and heard by all persons, and everywhere attended and assisted by Hadrian. He taught the right rule of faith and the canonical custom of celebrating Easter. This was the first archbishop whom all the English church consented to obey, and forasmuch as both of them were, as has been said before, fully instructed both in sacred and secular letters, they gathered a crowd of disciples, and rivers of wholesome knowledge daily flowed from them to water the hearts of their hearers. And together with the books of Holy Scripture, they also taught them the metrical art, astronomy, and ecclesiastical arithmetic. A testimony whereof is that there are still living at this day some of their scholars, who are as well versed in the Greek and Latin tongues as in their own, in which they were born. Nor were there ever happier times since the English came into Britain for having brave Christian kings. They were a terror to all barbarous nations, and the minds of all men were bent upon the joys of the heavenly kingdom, of which they had but lately heard, and who all who desired to be instructed in sacred studies had masters at hand to teach them. From that time also they began in all the churches of the English to learn church music, which till then had been only known in Kent, and excepting James, of whom we have spoken above, the first teacher of singing in the churches of Northumbrians was Eddy, surnamed Stephen, invited from Kent by the most Reverend Wilfrid, who was the first of the bishops of the English nation that learned to deliver to the churches of the English the Catholic manner of life, right? And the Catholic, meaning in this sense, it's the whole faith, right? And that which is believed everywhere in every geographic region and all times, right, by all people that are Christian at this time. It's beautiful. Saint Theodore, and this, you see this beautiful mixing, right? Here he is in the West of you have Greek and Latin, and learning all of these things, sacred and secular learning, right? Remember that all truth, even that truth that has been acquired outside of the church, it belongs to the church because we worship the whole Christ, who is the truth. That's the ancient way of understanding this. I also want to mention a few others here. We have Saint Eustathios, his wife, Theopiste, her baptismal name, his baptismal name, and his sons and their sons, Agapios and Theopistus. He was the Roman general Placidus, and he took the baptismal name of Eustathios. These are the baptismal names at the top. Her name was Tatiana by birth. And while hunting, he had this vision of a beautiful stag, uncommonly beautiful. And between the antlers, there he found a cross, the vision of the cross. And upon returning home, he discovered that his wife had a similar vision, or at least a vision in which she was pointed toward Christ and knew that she had to become a Christian. So with their sons, they founded the Christian bishop and they requested baptism. And his family endured incredibly difficult times. They were separated for a time and came together again. And after all of these trials, there was an event in which a public sacrifice to pagan gods occurred, and as a Roman general, he had to be present, and he was not. He refused to sacrifice. And so his Christian family, they were martyred. In 126, they were martyred by being placed in this large bronze bull, and it was heated up until they died. And here you see this in this manuscript, the family, the parents and the children, they're inside this bull. And there's a great book if you're interested in sort of graphic novel. There's a book on the cross and the stag by Gabriel Wilson. You can find that Ancient Faith Ministries, Amazon. It's a free commercial. We have on the 21st, the leave taking, the elevation of the cross. As I said, we have this period of time in which we celebrate feasts sometimes, this festal period. If you're familiar with Western tradition, you have the octave. And this is this drawing out of the feast, and the leave taking of the apodosis is on the 21st. We have the conception of John the Baptist. We commemorated his beheading at the end of the year in August, and the beginning of the year in September, his conception, and his parents Zacharias and Elizabeth. You notice the icon here. This is conception by normal manner that is blessed by God. Saint Silouan the Athonite on the 24th. There's so much you could say about Saint Silouan. I have to do his own video. A much more recent saint than some of the others we've talked about. And I recommend the book on Saint Silouan. It was put together by his spiritual son, Saint Sophrony of Essex. There's a new edition. This is the newer edition, the most recent edition. And it's hard to know what to say about Saint Silouan. I mean, if you want to learn about the basics of the spiritual life that underline everything about humility and love and obedience and prayer. Read Saint Silouan. His words from this saint that is near our time expresses so well the heart of Orthodox spirituality. And his spiritual son, Saint Sophrony, also read Saint Sophrony. Some of us in the United States, especially those of us who are priests, have been taught by disciples of Saint Sophrony. So Saint Silouan's teaching and Saint Sophrony's teaching have profoundly affected us and our ministries. And there's so much I could say. It's better to say nothing to keep this short, but look up Saint Silouan. Again, read Saint Silouan and Saint Sophrony of Essex. Some of the books are still published as Archimandrite Sophrony. They were published before his official glorification in addition to the calendar of the saints, but please. Also on the 24th, Thekla, the proto-martyr and equal to the apostles. Proto-martyr being the first woman martyr. Saint Stephen is the proto-martyr because he's the first martyr recorded in the Acts of the Apostles. She's equal to the apostles because of her missionary work, her missionary zeal for preaching the gospel, and her story, her life intertwines with Saint Paul. So read about Saint Thekla, this ancient saint who's loved by Antiochians. And if you read her story, you will learn why. But one of the very early saints, again the proto-martyr, and it also shows women in ministry, broadly speaking, right? In the Christian church, we don't have priestesses. In fact, the feminine form of the word priest is used for the priest's wife. So a priest is a presbyter, a presbytera is a priest's wife, churia, a priest's wife. But women have been hymnographers and empresses and educators and supported the ministry of Christ and his apostles and evangelists and lighteners of nations. And she's a good example of this. Okay, I know that is a very it's very short compared to what we have going on in this week. Some of the saints are not always saints that rank highly, and that ranking really has a lot to do with veneration. I mean, over the centuries, certain saints have become very important to particular churches. Like Thekla is very important to Antiochians. Some are very important to the Greeks. Some are very important to the Serbians. So particular locations. We have some saints of Alaska I didn't even mention that are important to us in North America. So that's what that ranking is about. And even though not highly ranked on the calendar, there's some of us who have particular saints in our families that are very important to us. You know, for me, the martyrs of the Boxer Rebellion in China. It includes a family, a priest family, including his little boy, John, who are very important to me, and their story very, very important to me. So the saints are the calendar is full of saints, and sometimes you have to look at a fuller list of saints sometimes to really see all of them. The important ones that, in this case, this calendar came from the Greek Archdiocese. Some that might be the most important or most familiar to Greeks, usually the ones that are in bold. But there are many other saints that are important, maybe to other parts of the world or to different people, different families. Okay, that is a little weekend review for next week. I hope it is a good week for you. May God bless you.